What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow, so today we are back going to be talking about the Traitors Season 2, Episode 10. Long time no see. If you all watched our Survivor Season 46 premiere last night, Alyssa and I are back this morning talking the Traitors. So, my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and I feel like this episode of The Traitors was kind of what we all knew was going to happen regardless. I feel like last week we talked about how it doesn't really matter which order Peter and Phaedra go out in because, Peter goes out first and they're going to turn on Phaedra. I feel like if Phaedra goes out first, then people are still going to vote for Peter just because he's annoying. So I think what happened. I feel like the fact that they focus so much on this challenge rather than any sort of strategy in this episode kind of shows that the producers also knew that what happened was going to happen. So
Sort of a meh episode. I feel like the first beginning of this season was so hype, so fun, and then sort of once around Dan got eliminated, it sort of has become a slower season. The cliffhangers are less good. Like, we start out this episode learning that Peter was the one voted out at the round table, and that's what we all guessed last week. There was no suspense. Like, they should have just shown Peter getting eliminated last week.
yeah, I don't know why they decided to do that the way they did that, especially because last week there are actually spoiler pictures that showed Phaedra at the challenge this week. And so it's like anyone who is sufficiently motivated would be able to figure out that Peter is the one who got voted out. So, like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people have also pointed out that part of the reason it started to feel slow is because they've done so much stuff to like put off murders or like do different things. Like someone said that in the past like 3 weeks there were supposed to be 6 people dead, but only 3 people got eliminated. Or there's supposed to be 6 people eliminated, but only 3 people actually got out between like the recruitment, the failed recruitment. Like there's been so
Mm.
much stuff that's happened that just kept people from going out, and then that is kind of silly in a game that's about people going home.
True. It reminds me of this most recent season of the challenge where, like, they had previous challenge champs come in and compete against the current cast in an elimination. So you could go like 2 or 3 weeks without anyone actually going home. If the current cast member beat the challenge champ, they get to stay in the game. If the challenge champ beat the current cast member, then the current cast member gets sent home. So you could have a period where no one gets even eliminated because they keep winning against the champs. So it reminds me of that a little bit, and maybe that's why it's been slow for the past few weeks. Maybe Peter should have accepted the traitor role when he was offered it, because now Peter gets eliminated. He gets no money from this, and everyone just realizes that this game is just numbers now, and they all know this, and it's sort of, depending on what group you're in, you're a little bit harder path to follow.
Yeah, I feel like that's another reason why the game kind of slowed down is whenever someone doesn't accept the seduction, it's kind of like, okay, like that's not really the point of the game. Go off, I guess. So I don't know. I feel like some of these people tried to play like too faithful of a game. Like Peter's whole thing about being the most faithful kind of, I feel like, slowed the game down because he was only willing to strategize with like 5 people. And then Phaedra's whole thing about wanting to be a faithful traitor, I feel like also kind of slowed the game down because she wasn't really willing to turn on the other Bravo celebrities. She wasn't really willing to make waves with her strategy
Mhm.
when it comes to the Traitors. Like, I still think this whole thing spirals back to the night when Dan tried to murder Bergie, and Parvati's like, no, don't do it. And according to people, like, Phaedra had no like input on that. Like Phaedra just let Parvati argue with Dan, and it's like, if you see the downfall of Dan as the downfall of Phaedra, you could say like, well, Phaedra should have kept him from murdering Berkey, or Phaedra should have built a better relationship with Dan so that he didn't try throwing her under the bus. Like,
Mm.
yeah.
I feel like the Bergie mess up is definitely at the turning point of the season where it starts to slow down. Like the Bergie mess up, then you get Dan going out, and then everyone is just all in on Parvati and Phaedra. I would want to know in this episode, do the Bravo people think Phaedra is a traitor and they're just strategizing and they're keeping her around because they're buddies with her, they're friends with her, they don't want to vote her out? Or are they strategizing like, let's keep her around because we know she's a traitor, so new traitors aren't recruited? It seems like with the editing, people like MJ maybe were thinking of it a little bit before this, but it seems like now they're seriously realizing that Phaedra is a traitor and they should vote her out this episode. So I would want to know, were people thinking Phaedra before and just like not willing to vote her out, or were the Bravo women just blinded by Phaedra and they didn't really know until now?
Yeah, this was kind of MJ's breakout episode, which is kind of weird that the penultimate episode is your breakout episode, but you do you, MJ. But I feel like the story of this episode was basically MJ coming to terms with the fact that Phaedra is a traitor and she voted out a faithful. And then there was also some sprinkling of like Phaedra and Sheree's like long-term relationship and the fact that Phaedra was kind of like, I don't want to have to lie to my 30-year friend anymore. So
Yeah, I would want to know. Maybe in the reunion they would talk about it. CT says, oh, the women, they're just following Phaedra, who's the traitor, because they hope maybe they'll get a traitor invite. I feel like this line is sort of true. I would think they would want Phaedra around so that they don't get murdered at the nighttime portion. And that's why you would keep someone that you know is a faithful around, because they're probably more likely to want you in the game because you're friends outside of the show. They won't kill you at night. So, yeah, I would want to know, did the Bravo people not realize till now, or were they thinking it and just didn't care and weren't willing to vote Phaedra out for strategy?
yeah, I don't know. I do think part of what makes this episode so frustrating to me is I feel like if Phaedra had been willing to put up like even a little bit of a fight, Sandra probably would have gone home. Like I feel like Kate was doing a pretty good job of like suggesting Sandra as a possible second traitor. So I think that's also kind of where we get Kate's her like speech to Phaedra when Phaedra was going home when she called Phaedra a selfish player. Like, yeah, if I'm the other traitor, I'm gonna be pissed off that you kind of just laid down and died. Because I think one of the things is Phaedra didn't really need the money, so for her, prioritizing the friendships was more important. But it's kind of like, what about this other person if you're kind of leaving in the lurch? Because if you have two traitors going into the final six, like that's a better situation than only having one.
Yeah, I think there was a Reddit thread about someone saying that some people's appearance fees were maybe more than like the total prize pot that you could have the potential of winning. Or it's like some of these people, just have a lot of money, or one Instagram post can make you $100,000. So it's like, oh, they don't necessarily care as much. It sort of reminds me of like Too Hot to Handle. I think they need to raise the prize pot in that show because $100,000 split or 100,000 total for one person isn't really getting people to want to like follow the rules of the game in Too Hot to Handle to get that money. They're hoping maybe they'll become an influencer and they can make that money with a few IG ads.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing where it's like you either need to make it a game show and make it money that people are worth playing, feel like it's worth playing over, or just be someone like Parvati or Phaedra who just lean into the camp of it all and have it be like, oh, like I'm trying to win, but like winning doesn't matter that much to me. Like I'm still going to get compensated fairly regardless. So I don't know.
So the murder time happens. It's breakfast in the morning. It's down between John and Trishelle. Shocker. It is good to be a Bravo girl here. I liked hearing Sandra's strategy at breakfast. She has talked about this before. Basically, she's befriending the housewives, she's befriending everyone so that you can hopefully make it to the end of the game. I think she's right here. That's the name of the game, like we've talked about all freaking season. Be useful to the traitors so they don't vote you out. Be one of their numbers, and then vote the traitors out at the end so you don't get murdered at nighttime. And then just try not to be too sus that you get voted out at a round table.
Yeah, I feel like part of the problem is, and we've discussed this kind of ad nauseum, but I feel like it's worth talking about when mentioning Sandra, is that some people come in with such big targets on their backs that even if you do make it to the final, people might still vote you out anyway. So I feel like, I don't know. I think Sandra is doing what she does well, which is get to the end, but I think she's not ignorant of the fact, but I think maybe she doesn't really realize that now she doesn't have to convince other people to vote for her to win the game. She needs to convince other people to continue not voting for her, which is a very different like end game than Survivor, because in the Survivor end game, if Sandra got to the end, she could just be like, here's all of the things that I did, here's why I was a good player, vote for me. Whereas in the Traitors, it's not enough just to get to the final like fire. You have to then also keep on being like, I'm a faithful, I'm a faithful, I'm a faithful, which I'm not sure that she has enough cred to get to the final five, but I'm not sure that she would be able to convince people beyond a shadow of a doubt that she's not a traitor.
I agree. I think Sandra's probably getting eliminated, whether she's next or at the sandbag portion of the game. I don't think Sandra is going to be winning, like splitting the money in any kind of way. I do think she's probably getting eliminated because, like what you're saying, I think because there's so many Bravo people too, you're also at a disadvantage. Trishelle and CT are from the same TV show. Like, these people have these outside bonds. Even if they don't think you're a traitor necessarily, they might just say, let's vote you out because we just met you, 2 weeks ago. Let's just split the money amongst ourselves, kind of thing. Or, like we saw this episode, people are starting to suss Sandra because she is Sandra. She's good at strategy. And if I were there too, I'd be like, why wouldn't they pick a 2-time Survivor winner to be a traitor? Like, that would make a lot of sense. I would just vote people out at the end just because if they aren't a super faithful, like if they aren't someone that for sure is a faithful, like Trishelle or Sheree, who are very faithful, I would just vote everyone else out because you increase your chances of winning and you increase the money that you're winning.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe if you're one of the Bravo ladies, like it's actually a good thing for you that like it seems like Kate might go for another Bravo celebrity to pin more stuff on Sandra moving into the next round table, because it's kind of like if all of the Bravo celebrities who are in this episode make it to the final, that's like what, a 4-way split between them. So you
That's
also kind of
probably
have
like
to,
that's like pennies for those people.
right? Because people are saying like, oh, Phaedra was paid over $1 million for her final season of The Real Housewives, so of course $250,000 is not gonna like be that big of a deal. So yeah, I don't know, which comes back to what we were talking about earlier with like, that's the problem with the influencer seasons, because it's like they're gonna find ways to make more money than you're offering them.
Yeah. Phaedra at this breakfast time, she becomes sort of like Dan. She's not really giving any information at breakfast. I agreed. I thought this did look sus. Like, okay, you know the outcome. You know who you and Kate murdered last night, but why not just say the obvious? You think it's John or Trishelle. Like, just follow everyone else's answers here. No need to be coy and just be like, oh, I don't know. It looks more sus because then it's like, oh, you have the answer key, so you're purposefully not saying like a right answer or a wrong answer. But I feel like it'd be pretty obvious just to be like John or Trishelle because all of the previous ones were Peter's group.
Yeah, I mean, some people have said that the only way to prove that you know 100% of the answers like on a test is actually to get a 0% on the test, because you can get the right answer by accident, but it's very difficult to guess wrong on every single one. So I feel like that's the kind of thing where Phaedra doesn't want to get a 100% on the test, but she should realize that getting a 0% is also suspicious.
And maybe Dan needed that too. You got to give some information. Like, if you have no ideas, that just looks whack. And like they said, that makes you a bad faithful, so we should just vote you out anyways, too.
Mm-hmm.
So John ends up being murdered. They were making fun of John being old or not old, so this was a little bit funny. MJ here says that she thinks there are 2 traitors left. MJ at the beginning of the season had some smart things, had some good lines. People thought she was a traitor. She sort of disappeared here in the middle of the season, but now MJ is back this episode with some hot takes. Kate here is saying, let's vote Sandra. I do feel like she should have pushed Sandra more. Then Kate could probably win the game because then they would just banish Phaedra this time and then maybe Sandra next time and then maybe end the game. If you've got your Bravo women with you, maybe they don't suspect Kate.
I don't know. I feel like Kate shouldn't push Sandra because if she pushes Sandra too hard and then Sandra is revealed to be a faithful, then it's going to be like, oh, Kate, why were you pushing Sandra so hard? I think the level that she was doing was really good because she was like, hey, I have some thoughts, but she's not like campaigning and being like, everyone needs to vote for Sandra, which again, I feel like is why Phaedra should have like done a little something this episode, because if it's just Kate campaigning, but then Phaedra like offers herself up on a silver platter, like that's very different from like if Phaedra continues to maybe be like, I'm still faithful, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Maybe then Sandra does become the more attractive option. And then you as Kate can say like, oh shoot, I thought that it was Sandra. I guess like everyone was right and it was Phaedra or something like that. Like, I feel like this was just bad play by Phaedra.
I feel like they should have coordinated. Like, I liked Kate's plan that she threw out saying, save Phaedra until the final day because we know she's a traitor. Let's vote Sandra tonight to see, which made Sandra sus Kate now because of this. But I feel like, yeah, Kate and Phaedra should have gotten on the same page when they had their meeting in the turret of, okay, coordinated attack. Who are we going to throw under the bus tomorrow? Let's make a plan. Let's say the same name, and then let's start dropping little hints to people. So it looks less weird of Kate pushing Sandra so much, but maybe they drop seeds to like CT because Phaedra and CT are close and just start like manipulating people to see your way. I feel like a tag team approach here would have worked a little bit better rather than Kate just being the only one to say it. So I feel like, yeah, Kate should have pushed more in a sense that they should have came up with a plan together or something because it was just all over the place. It was very odd.
Yeah, and I don't know. It feels like they should have talked about that in the turret, especially because Kate did say when she first came to Phaedra, like, you know, what's the plan? What's going on? So, like, I also feel like that's something that Dan, Parvati, and Phaedra should have talked about when Parv was first recruited. Like, you know, how are we going to play this game? Because I feel like that could have kind of preempted some of Dan's like being too quiet thing. That could have also, people were saying that Dan and Parvati seemed like too much of a duo. So when Dan was a traitor, it was obvious Parvati was a traitor. Like, I feel like if they talked more strategy in the turret beyond just who's getting murdered, that could have helped all of the traitors succeed.
Yeah, you got to start thinking a few steps ahead. And maybe they did talk about it and it was edited out of the show. But we get to the challenge. Alan's dog is back, so that was cute. I love seeing the little doggy in its carrier crate thingy next to the bed, next to Alan. So that was very cute. For this challenge, you had to get gold and then balance out a weight after jumping over like lily pad platforms on water. It's giving very much like water park vibes. They've got these kinds of platforms at the water park, and literally everyone just can't do it. I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, I understand the first time kind of falling off because you're still like figuring out how they work. But I feel like the problem is that they all jumped and then they didn't move. They just jumped and stayed on the corner and then were surprised when the platform like tipped. And I don't know. I'm sure it's one of those things where I would be singing a very different tune if I was the one who was actually there. But it seems like a lot of the people who are left are the less athletic people. And so then it's basically just CT and Trishelle carrying this challenge because they're the ones who are still athletic.
It's like the less athletic people and maybe more so of the people that are more like I don't know the correct word, like put together, like they're above doing a challenge like this. So, oh, I'll try it once and then I'm not going to try it again. Cause it's like the same group that quit the haunted house challenge where Dr. Will was there. It's like that kind of person that, like, oh, okay, I'll try it, but I can't do it. I'm never going to do it again. That kind of person, I feel like.
Yeah, I think part of it is what we were talking about earlier, where they don't really need the money. So I think that also is like, if this thing is hard to do and I'm only getting $150 per gold nugget anyway, like, what's the point? So,
It's what Phaedra said. What, $400 can't even buy you a good pair of shoes or something?
yeah, you'd need like 5 whole gold nuggets to even get a decent pair of shoes, according to Phaedra.
So, yeah, this was a long challenge, like you mentioned earlier. I was like, okay, it's sort of funny seeing people flop into the water, but it's the same thing over and over again. MJ is flopping, and then she ends up getting the shield, so that's good for her. I was like, can't CT and Trishelle just keep going back and forth? Like, are the jumps really that difficult that no one else can do it? But good for them. CT and Trishelle, they come from a challenge based show, so it just makes sense that they can carry this challenge.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that Sandra would also be able to, since Survivor is kind of a challenge based show, but I guess Sandra is also kind of notorious for being a sit out, so.
Oh, alas. So they do get some money there, and we go to the round table. MJ and Sandra are campaigning, saying Phaedra. I felt like this round table was just so fast. I was like, wait, it's already over and they're voting already? Phaedra literally did not even put up any of a fight.
Yeah, it was kind of frustrating just because it's like, at least say something. And then when she voted for CT. And I was kind of like, come on, girl. Like, everyone knows that CT's a faithful. And like, she made the whole comment about, like, I'm all for girl power. And like, maybe that's because Phaedra didn't want people to read too far into like who she voted for. Like, if she voted for Sandra, would then people
Mm.
think Sandra was automatically a faithful? If she voted for Kate, would people think Kate was automatic? Like, that kind of thing. But it still, I feel like, was not a good look. I was kind of like, come on, Phaedra, say something, do something.
CT is definitely the easy vote here. Like we said, I do think Kate and Phaedra should have gotten on the same page potentially in throwing out a name together. And once they realize that Sandra's name isn't going to get a majority of the votes, then you switch it up, you change your tune. I think it is good that Phaedra and Kate both didn't vote for Sandra here because then it would be very awkward once Phaedra's revealed as a traitor. Then you'd be like, yo, Kate is probably a traitor too, because why else would they vote the same way here? So I do think it's good that she sort of voted random, but it's also just like she fought so hard at like the Dan round table, other round tables, and here it was like 2 minutes and then they voted.
Yeah, I feel like Kate's biggest mistake this episode was when she voted for Phaedra. She gave this whole speech about how
Mm-hmm.
Phaedra was selfish, and I feel like that's going to come back to bite her in the butt because you kind of see at the end someone's like, why are you calling Phaedra selfish? Like, you should be happy. Like, she's a traitor. We got her sent home. So I think people are suspecting Kate based on that.
I agree. I think Kate messed that up. Like, it's weird that throughout the entire episode, you see Kate push Sandra's name. So, what changed? Other people are probably also wondering what changed. She was so anti Sandra throughout the day, wanting to vote Sandra. So, why did she switch all of a sudden and now is like really ragging in and attacking Phaedra? That's very suspect compared to, okay, I was proposing Sandra's name. People aren't biting this time. I will vote your way and just say as your speech, I think you're a traitor. I don't think you're a traitor. I'm going along with other people's plans, that kind of thing, and not like do the attack on Phaedra. It just looks very sus that you'd switch your tune so quickly and then go in on the person rather than being more neutral.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be an uphill battle for Kate to get to the end. I have a feeling that we're going to see a faithful win this season.
I agree. I think we will see a faithful win as well. People are flubbing a little bit, so I'm excited for next week with the finale. I'm excited to see how Kate is able to navigate as a sole traitor, because her coming in to the traitor position maybe seems like she doesn't have too much strategy, so it'll be interesting her alone trying to strategize in the turret to see what happens. It'll also be interesting to see like who the last murder is, and interesting to see if the sandbags they eliminate all the traitors or if they end the game.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Kate, all of her like comments in the tower have been funny, but I don't think they necessarily show a lot of strategy. So I think
Mhm.
it's going to be interesting to see when she's not just like playing off of Phaedra, making jokes about putting the dick in dictator. Like, is she actually able to play a solid game?
Yeah, so I'm excited for next week. Let us know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode. Did you think it was another slow episode? Should they have just told us Peter was voted out last week? Do you think Phaedra should have fought more at the round table to try not to get eliminated? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you all next week with the Traitors finale as well as Survivor episode 2.